Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Text 18. Tam Sarva Guna Vinaya Vinyasam
Tam Sarvaguna Vinayasam
Jive Mayamaye Niyadhat
Jive Mayamaye Nedhat
Tam Chanushayam Atmastham
Tam Cha Anushayam Atmastham
Asap Anushayi Puman
Asa Anushayi Puman
Jnana Vairagya Viryena
Jnana Vairagya Viryena
Swarupasto Jahat Prabhu.
Swarupasto Ajahat Prabhu.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Pṛthu Mahārāja then offered the total designation of the living entity into the supreme controller of illusory energy. Being released from all the designations by which the living entity became entrapped, he became free by knowledge and renunciation, and by the spiritual force of his devotional souls. In this way, being situated in his original constitutional position of Krishna consciousness, he gave up this body as a Prabhu or controller of the senses. As stated in the Vedas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the source of material energy. Consequently, he is sometimes called Maya Maya, or the Supreme Person, who can create his pastimes through his potency, known as the material energy. So Krishna says this material energy belongs to him. Bhagavad Gita, he says, Devi hi esha gunamai, mama maya, my maya. Then he says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti, this material energy is working under my supervision. So this material energy belongs to Krishna. She's one of Krishna's energies. The jiva, or the individual living entity, becomes entrapped by the material energy, by the supreme will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita 1861, we understand Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriteshir Junatishtati Brahmyan Sarva Bhutani Yantarudani Mayaya. Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is situated within the heart of all conditioned souls, and by his supreme will, the living entity or individual soul gets the facility to lord it over material nature in various types of bodies, which are known as yantra, or the moving vehicle offered by the total material energy Maya. So one may say, oh, why does Krishna put me here? Krishna is saying, by supreme will of Krishna, I've got it now covered. But we have to see, Krishna is giving us the facility to lord it over material nature, because it's our desire. Our desire to lord it over material nature. So Krishna gives us this facility through the agency of Maya. And that's the point we have to understand. And we are responsible for being here. Although, like, the prisoner cannot blame the jailer for putting him in prison. The jailer will say, why did you do mischief? That's why I put you in prison. But if the prisoner starts saying, I came here because the jailer put me, that's not right. That's what we do. But it's our responsibility. The desire is ours. Although the individual living entity Jiva and the Lord are both situated within the material energy, the Lord is directing the movements of the Jiva soul by offering him different types of bodies through the material energy. And thus, the living entity is wandering throughout the universes and various forms of body and becomes implicated in different situations, partaking of the reactions of fruitive activities. So the Paramatma is there next to us inside this body, We are there and the Paramatma is there. The soul is there and the super soul is there. But we are attached to enjoying this material world. We are attached to the fruits of our activities. We do something because we want to gain something out of it. And that's the reason we continue in this material world. We become implicated. And hence we are creating more and more bodies for ourselves. When Pṛthu Mahārāja, so that is the law of karma. When Pṛthu Mahārāja became spiritually powerful by the enhancement of his spiritual knowledge, Gyan, and renunciation of material desires, he became a Prabhu or master of his senses, sometimes called Goswami or Swami. This means that he was no longer controlled by the influence of material energy. How does the material energy control us?
They're putting you in the illusion.
Yeah, but specifically,
and then controlling your senses.
Yeah, it's by the modes of nature that she controls us. We are bound by the ropes. You know how an animal is bound by ropes? Like that, we are bound by the gunas, goodness, passion, and ignorance. That's how she controls us. When one is strong enough to give up the influence of material energy, he is called Prabhu. So, how can we be able to give up this influence of material energy? What do we have to do?
By devotional service, hearing and chanting, continuously remembering Krishna.
Yes, thank you. The real identity of the individual soul lies in understanding or attaining the knowledge that he is eternally a servant of Krishna. So this is real knowledge. We are saying we want Gyan. So what is the Gyan? To understand our eternal position, that we Jivera Swarupaya Krishna Nityadas. Prabhupada says, immediately, as soon as one understands this, immediate liberation. You don't have to wait for births and births, lifetimes and lifetime for liberation. We just understand this. Jivera Swarupai Krishna Nityadas. That I am eternal servant of Krishna. As soon as we understand it, we get liberated. This understanding is called Swarupolabdhi. Swarupolabdhi. Upalabdhi. By culturing devotional service, the devotee gradually comes to understand his actual relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding of one's pure
Sorry, I just wanted to say that word is Swarup Uplabdhi.
Swarup Upalabdhi. Thank you.
Yeah.
Swarup Upalabdhi. Thank you. So this understanding of one's pure spiritual position is called Swarup Upalabdhi. And when one attains that stage, he can understand how he is related with the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a servant or friend, or as a parent or conjugal lover. Now, this is a desirable position for each and every one of us. Each of us may have so many desires, but if somehow or the other we can also have this desire that, oh, I wish I can understand my relationship with Krishna. Somehow or the other, we should try to have this desire. What is my eternal relationship with Krishna? This stage of understanding is called Swarupastha. Pṛthu Mahārāja realized this Swarup completely, and it will be clear in the later verses that he personally left this world or this body by riding on a chariot sent from Vaikuntha. Who went in an aeroplane coming from Vaikuntha?
Dhruv Maharaj.
Dhruv Maharaj, that's right. So same family. That's a great family. In this verse, the word Prabhu is also significant. As stated before, when one is completely self-realized and acts according to that position, he can be called a Prabhu. Prabhu, one who is liberated, self-realized, understood. I'm eternal servant of Krishna. The spiritual master is addressed as Prabhupada because he is completely self-realized soul. The word path means position, and Prabhupada indicates that he is given the position of Prabhu or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he acts on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada, that he is self-realized. He has understood his position at the lotus feet of Krishna. Also means that at his lotus feet, so many other Prabhus are sitting. At the lotus feet of the spiritual master, so many of his disciples who are self-realized are sitting. Unless one is a Prabhu or controller of the senses, he cannot act as a spiritual master who is authorized by the Supreme Prabhu or Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Prabhu. Hey Prabhu, we say, addressing to Krishna. So the spiritual master is the representative of Krishna. He's not Krishna. He's not God. But he is the one who can take us to God. In this verse, in his verses, praising the spiritual master, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, Sakshat Daritvena Samasta Shastra Uktas Tatha Bhavayata Eva Sadhi. The spiritual master is honored as much as the Supreme Lord. Why is he honored? Because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. That's the reason he's honored. Because he's the confidential servitor of the Lord. You know, for example, if a diplomat from Indian government comes to Taiwan, then he'll be given all the honor that would be given to the president himself, right? Because he's representing the president. He's come on his behalf. So similarly, the spiritual master comes on behalf of Krishna. He comes to do this confidential service on behalf of Krishna, and that service is to bring us, as conditioned souls, back home, back to Godhead. Thus, Pṛthu Maharaj can also be called Prabhupada, or as described here in Prabhu. Another question may be raised in this connection. Since Pṛthu Maharaj was a power incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shakti-Avesh Avatar, why did he have to execute the regulative principles in order to become a Prabhu? Why? Because he appeared on this earth as an ideal king, and because it is the duty of the king to instruct the citizens in the execution of devotional service. He followed all the regulative principles of devotional service in order to teach others. So, teaching by example. That is an acharya. Acharya teaches by example. So, Pṛthu Maharaj, he is an example for us to follow. He was telling his citizens, do your duty for the satisfaction of Krishna. He's saying to engage in devotional service for the satisfaction of Krishna. And he's showing it. And now he's getting liberated. He's going back home. So he's telling us, teaching us by example. Just like the teacher writes ABC to teach the children, not that she's learning ABC. It's not that she doesn't know, but she's teaching the children. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although Krishna himself, taught us how to approach Krishna as a devotee. It is said, Apani Achari Bhakti Shikhainu Sabare. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed others in the process of devotional service by setting the example himself through his own personal actions. So Lord Chaitanya, Krishna himself, is teaching us how to engage in devotional service. He's teaching us how we can approach Krishna by chanting the holy names. Similarly, Pṛthu Maharaj, although a Shakti-Avesh avatar incarnation, still behaved exactly as a devotee in order to achieve the position of Prabhu. You know, Krishna says, no, in Bhagavad Gita, what great men do, common people follow. Now, Pṛthu Maharaj, he himself, if he doesn't engage in devotional service, then his praja, his citizens will say, well, you're not doing, why are you telling us to do? You know, like if when the teacher is telling the children, oh, don't smoke, but the teacher is smoking, then the kids will look, oh, really? It's so bad? Why are you telling me not to smoke then? Why are you smoking? So teaching by example. Lord Chaitanya gave a great stress on this. He said one should not become a preacher till the time they cannot be the example. Furthermore, Swarupastha means complete liberation, as it is said. Bhagavatam 2.10.6 Hitvan yatha rupam swarupena vyavasthiti. When a living entity abandons the activities of Maya and attains the position from which he can execute devotional service, his state is called Swarupstha, or complete liberation. So Bhagavatam is telling us how we can immediately get liberated. Prabhupada says immediately one can get liberated. That one engages in devotional service to Krishna. Understanding, I'm eternal servant of Krishna. I'm not this body. Giving up all the upadhis, engaging in devotional service. So many might say liberation is the end, but actually liberation is the beginning of real life. It's the beginning. It's not that it's the end. We say rest in peace because we don't know where the soul is going, but the soul is always active, eternally active. So this is liberation that Pṛthu Mahārāja is achieving. Any questions or comments?
No. No.
So this is the position of real nirvana. Real nirvana, not thinking that it is something black or something, that after liberation is just some light or something black. No, but engaging in pure devotional service, understanding I am an eternal loving servant of Krishna, and then engaging in that relationship. Archinama Mahārāja
Archirnama Maharagi
Tatpatni Anugatavanam
Tatpatni Anugatavanam
Sukumari Atat Arhacha
Sukumari Atat Arhacha
Tatpadbhyam Sparshanam Bhuva.
Yatpadbhyam Sparshanam Bhuva.
The queen, the wife of Pṛthu Mahārāja, whose name was Archie, followed her husband into the forest. Since she was a queen, her body was very delicate. Although she did not deserve to live in the forest, she voluntarily touched her lotus feet to the ground. Because Pṛthu Mahārāja's wife was the queen and also a daughter of a king, she never experienced walking on the ground. For queens never used to come out of the palace. They certainly never went to the forests and tolerated all the difficulties of living in the wilderness. In Vedic civilization, there are hundreds of similar examples of such renunciation on the part of queens and dedication to the husband. The goddess of fortune, Mother Sita, followed her husband Ramachandra when he went to the forest. Lord Ramachandra went to the forest in compliance with the order of his father, Maharaj Dashrath. But Mother Sita was not so ordered. Nonetheless, she voluntarily accepted the path of her husband. Similarly, Gandhari, the wife of King Dhritarashtra, also followed her husband into the forest. So Prabhupada is giving these two examples of where the wives are following the husband into the forest. Queens. Mother Sita, she was a princess. Gandhari was the queen. Such queens also instructed the general people by showing them how to become a chaste wife and follow the husband in every stage of life. When the husband is king, she sits beside him as the queen. And when he goes to the forest, she also follows, despite having to tolerate all kinds of difficulties in living in the forest. Therefore, it is said here, Atad Arha, that although she did not want to touch her feet to the ground, she nonetheless accepted all difficulties when she went to the forest with her husband. So, see how much are we able to read. Ativa bharturita dharma nishtaya
अतीव भर्तु व्रत धर्म निष्ठया
शुश्रूषया चार्ष देहा यात्रया
शुश्रूषया च आर्षदेहयात्रया
नाविन्दतार्तिं परिकर्षितापि सा
न विन्दत आर्तिम परिकर्षिता अपि सा
प्रेयस्करस्पर्शनमाननिर्वृते
प्रेयस्करस्पर्शन्मान्निर्वति.
Although she was not accustomed to such difficulties, Queen Archie followed her husband in the regulative principles of living in the forest like great sages. She lay down on the ground and ate only fruits, flowers, and leaves. And because she was not fit for these activities, she became frail and thin. Yet, because of the pleasure she derived in serving her husband, she did not feel any difficulties. The words Bhartur Vrata Dharma Nishtaya indicate that a woman's duty or religious principle is to serve her husband in all conditions. In Vedic civilization, a man is taught from the beginning of his life to become a brahmachari, then an ideal grahast, then vanapras, then sannyasi, and the wife is taught just to follow the husband strictly in all conditions of love. So in Vedic times, the man was taught to be a devotee from the beginning of life. And the woman, just by following the husband, because the husband is a devotee, she also would get perfection of life. After the period of brahmacharya, a man accepts a householder's life, and the woman is also taught by her parents to be a chaste wife. Thus, when a girl and boy are united, both are trained for a life dedicated to a higher purpose. The boy is trained to execute his duty in accordance with the higher purpose of life, and the girl is trained to follow him. The chaste wife's duty is to keep her husband pleased in householder life in all respects. And when the husband retires from family life, she is to go to the forest and adopt the life of Vanaprasth or Vanavasi. At that time, the wife is to follow her husband and take care of him, just as she took care of him in householder life. But when the husband takes the renounced order of life, namely sannyas, the wife is to return home and become a saintly woman, setting an example for her children and daughters in law and showing them how to live a life of austerity. So, this is Vedic times. Current society is very different. Some people may say this way, or some people may say other way. But anyway, this is the Vedic times where both the husband and wife were trained from the beginning for a high purpose, that is, to make this life the last life. So the husband was ideal, and the wife, because she's following her ideal husband, she also becomes ideal. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, his wife Vishnu Priya Devi, although only 16 years old, also took the vow of austerity due to her husband's leaving home. She chanted her beads, and after finishing one round, she collected 1 grain of rice. In this way, as many rounds as she chanted, she would receive the same number of rice grains and then cook them and so take prasad. This is called austerity. So, Vishnu Priya, Lord Chaitanya's consort, after he left home, she would barely eat, as is mentioned. How many rounds she would eat, that many grains of rice she would cook and eat that. Even today in India, widows or women whose husbands have taken sannyas follow the principles of austerity, even though they live with their children. Pṛthu Mahārāja's wife, Archie, was steadily determined to execute the duty of a wife. And while her husband was in the forest, she followed him in eating only fruits and leaves and lying down on the ground. Since a woman's body is considerably more delicate than a man's, Queen Archie became very frail and thin, parikarshita. When one engages in austerities, his body generally becomes lean and thin. So you'll remember anyone else who did a lot of austerities in the forest and she became thin and frail?
Devahuti
Also,
Mata?
Devahuti.
Devahuti.
Yeah, Devahuti, yeah. Becoming fat is not very good qualification in spiritual life because a person who is engaged in spiritual life must reduce the comforts of the body, namely eating, sleeping, and mating, to a minimum. Although Queen Archie became very thin from living in the forest, according to regulative principles, she was not unhappy, for she was enjoying the honor of serving her great husband. So someone may think, oh, she's suffering, she's being tortured or manipulated, but she's happy. She was enjoying herself in that situation. Any questions, comments?
Even Kunti Mata would be included here or no? Like
Yeah,
she
well,
also,
she also went to the forest, yes. Kunti and Madri, they both went with
yeah,
Pandu to the forest.
yeah.
Yeah, yes, they
But
did.
that was not, but like as you mentioned, but that was not like the sannyas. They were not
Yeah,
the sannyas, right? That was just due to
no.
other reason.
Yeah, he was just like kind of taking a break from his kingdom, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
At least that's what I understand it as.
Yeah, it's kind of that. I mean.
Yeah, that's why he wanted to like have more kids than to.
Hmm.
So that was not sannyas, he was just like kind of taking a break.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam
Jai,
ki jai, Gaur
Jai.
Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Thank